Sure. So I think some of the things that I did, I used to be in fashion in New York, sales, advertising, ended up in California, in Silicon Valley, not technical, couldn't get a job. Quite honestly, I had to tempt my way into work so I could learn computers. And then I finally got into Apple Computer on a temporary basis. And after 6 months, I was hired. The job that nobody wanted. I ended up in manufacturing. If you can imagine working for Vogue magazine and then you're in manufacturing with production lines, it's pretty, it brings you down a little bit. But I stayed in the manufacturing. It ended up being one of the best jobs I ever had because I learned about project management. I realized I was very good with numbers. I was very organized and I ran large manufacturing teams. But the best thing for me was it traveled me around the world.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you are watching us or listening to us. And thank you for being part of the Material Business Podcast. My name is Monica Hernandez, and I'm your host. And I have a really special guest today. Tracey, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Monica. I really appreciate it.
I feel like now I'm interviewing the interviewer because you have been in the zone of TV and all those areas a lot more than me. So just bear with me if we do get something.
Great.
To the audience, I want to remind you that please subscribe so we can continue bringing super amazing guests like Tracey. We are going to talk a little bit about how is this transition, and we are hearing all the artificial intelligence, and is that going to take over and we won't have jobs in the future? But we will also bring a lot of the amazing skills that Tracey has built throughout her career. We're going to talk about that. She's been in various areas, and that will allow her to firsthand speak to us about how are those transitions better for you rather than what we all think being in our comfort zone is always the best for us. So, Tracey, thank you again for being part of the Material Business Podcast. If you want to introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. I'm based out in California. I spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley. That's where the most of my career has been, although I did start in New York in fashion. I do talk about the fourth industrial revolution and how the World Economic Forum tells us that the technologies have outpaced us. And it's scary for people because artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, big data are technologies that we really can't touch or feel. And so therefore we're sort of scared of it. And then ChatGPT came out, and artificial intelligence has been around for a long time. And people found that it was very user friendly and easy to use and useful. And I think it's important that people look at these technologies and as assistants, like how can I use this to write a letter? Or how can I use this to help me develop a proposal? Or, something in the work or personal life that would be helpful. So I don't think it's necessary for us to get alarmed about it because technology is really there to assist us. You can't really let it run on its own because it could go in, it doesn't know what to do. And that's why we talk a lot about hallucinations, right? If you, like a person, you can't think what to do, you make it up. And a lot of times with artificial intelligence, without guidance, will make it up. So I don't think we have to worry about it. But if you have a very rote or routine job that is repetitive over and over again, artificial intelligence or robotics really can duplicate that and replicate it. And that's where I think you have to think about where is humanity's creativity really separating you from the rote and routine.
Well, you've touched in very good points. So, how can we use it to our advantage? And how can we not be scared out of it? So, let's break those two things out. So, first of all, how can we not be scared? Because there will be still room for us to be humans and, work and do the everyday life.
Yeah, so let me step back, and everybody has a smart device. And that existed, and the adoption rate of our iPhones and all our devices is to the point that we're so addicted to them, we can't function without it. And that's technology that didn't exist. And you have new technologies like Uber or Amazon or Airbnb, and we are addicted to these technologies. If someone tried to take them away from us, we would be kicking and screaming. So somehow or another, these technologies came into our lives. We found the use case. We found it very valuable and functional, and now we're addicted to it. So artificial intelligence is just another technology that has moved into our lives. It's simple to use. And I have a friend of mine, she's a lawyer, and she was very against artificial intelligence. And she has an upcoming case with a union, and she's helping a nonprofit. And so I asked her all the questions that she was thinking about, and I wrote it into ChatGPT, and it came back with a strategy for her. And she was like, "Oh my God, that just saved me so much time." It doesn't mean ChatGPT is going to negotiate the case for her. It gave her just depending on how you ask the question, which is called a prompt. How do I do this? How do I do that?
Mhm.
I had another friend of mine who's older, and she said, "I'm going to be turning 65 this year. And someone told me in the US that I have to get Medicare. I don't even know how to find out about it, who to ask about it, or what to do." So, and she said, "My husband's working and I'm not. He's insured. I'm not, I don't know, he's younger than me and all this stuff." So I went to ChatGPT and I said, "Just give me your questions." And it aggregates very quickly a lot of answers and points of where to go. If she had spent her time to try to figure that out, she would have been calling people. She would have been looking up, by trying to find a financial advisor, her health provider, asking a lot of friends. And this just went to the point very fast. So my recommendation is get your hands dirty with technology. Pick it up, try it, use it. And right now, ChatGPT is free. And a lot of these generative artificial intelligence models are free because they want people to try them. So that would be my recommendation. As with any technology, like you do with your phones and your smart devices and Netflix and Amazon, pick it up, try it, because it's, really helps you.
And it will definitely get you the answers depending on the prompt that you're asking for, right? So it is, I guess the key is learning to know how to ask the question.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Yeah, the prompt. In fact, a lot of companies are reskilling and training in this area, and they're bringing in people who can explain a prompt. And a prompt, to simplify it, is really this question that you can ask these models, and it's how you write it. So, for example, I wanted to do a LinkedIn post. So I wrote it down, I put it into ChatGPT and said, "LinkedIn post, please fix, colon," and then I pasted what it had. And what came back to me was a really well written post with lots of emojis, hashtags, and reminders of who I needed to tag and all these things in the post. So the prompt is the key. Another example is when Bard came out, and Bard has sort of evolved, but it was the first one that offered us the ability to try free images. And so for my presentation, as a lot of presenters, we worry about copyright of images that we might think are copyright free, but they're not. So if you go into Bard or one of these tools, you can ask it in a prompt, "Please," I said, "please make me a superhuman female that has replaced biogenic body parts who will live to 100. And what came out was a superwoman kind of combination. And you could tell it wasn't a photo, it was an
Mm-hmm.
image, but at least it could create for me something. And I, of course, attribute the copyright to Bard, but it gave me something that I couldn't find anywhere and gave me beautiful colors and images. So a lot of this is about learning the prompt, which is not that hard to do.
So just to put into context our audience, maybe the question that I'll ask is, do you think we are moving into the era of machine replacing humans, or that is not foreseeable in the next future? Or how do you see that you're in there, like you are in the move? So how do you see this coming?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that one. Could you repeat that?
Sure. So the question was, do you think that we are moving into the era of the machine replacing the human, or that is just a myth?
Okay. So, some people call it, I think, the age of intelligence or this new realm. I don't think that machines or software will replace us unless we let it, right? So there's always, I'm very optimistic about humanity and creativity. The reason why we have these technologies is because humans are creative and they created it. And we will always continue to evolve as a society as long as we're using our creative facilities, our brain, and keeping up. If you choose, I'll give you a story of, it's a little old story, but it's helpful. There's a hotel in New York. It's called the Yotel. And years ago, there was a big to do because they brought in a robotic bellboy. And it's just a machine that when customers came in, it would pick up the luggage and put it away. And they really brought it in the robot to replace people, the hard work, because bellboys, it's heavy lifting. And they wrote an article in the newspaper because people are like, oh, the robots are taking people's jobs. And the general manager said, hey, look, let me give you 3 examples of the bellboys here. Yes, the first bellboy said, I only know how to be a bellboy. So if you replace me with a robot, I'm out of a job. And robots are taking my job. But he ended up going to another hotel in New York because not all hotels have robotic bellboys. The second one said, I'm understanding that I need to expand my skills. So if the robot is going to take over my job, could you move me to another part of the hotel? And they moved him to the front desk because he was a very personable person and he wanted to learn. The third one said, I'm very comfortable with learning technology and I'm a really good bellboy. So he went to the manufacturer, the company, and said, I could be your director of sales and I could sell this to other hotels. And he became a general manager of sales. So the hotel said, look, it's really up to you what you want to do. We're trying to do good things for our customers. We're trying to protect the backs and the strength of our staff. But at the end of the day, your career choice, your skilling, your path is something that you really need to think about and manage yourself. We can't really manage that for you, but we can facilitate it for you. So I thought it was a very good article and a very good story.
It's an amazing story. I love it.
Yeah.
It is there is an analogy that says you have your egg and you put your egg to boil, and then it becomes hard. But then you put it to fry and it's less hard. So it is not really up to the egg. It's up to where you're putting it and what you want it to become. So do you really want it to be a propeller of your future? Do you want to use this as I can help myself with this technology to be better? Or would I just play the victim and say, oh, my job is taken away, it's all other people's fault? So ultimately, it comes down to It is your futures. And the easier it will become easier as you get to know and play with it, like you said, get your hands dirty and then go play with it. Nothing bad is going to happen if you start playing with it on your own rather than waiting for someone to tell you what to do. And then maybe it is a task that you need to do and you don't know how to do it. So it's a really good story. I really liked it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that over the years, I've run large organizations, and every year I would sit down with my incoming employee and we would look at the job description. And I would say to him or her, this job is not going to look like this next year. And the reason is because of you, because
Mhm.
you are smart. You're going to go learn, you're going to develop the skills, you're going to look at the marketplace, and you're going to become the CEO of this job. And that means in a year from now, it's going to look completely different. If it doesn't look completely different, then shame on me for hiring you because I should have hired a robot or artificial intelligence software or something, because that means it would have been flat. So I think it is important. I call it taking a career selfie. We
Mhm.
need to really take ownership of our careers and take a snapshot of where you are in time and figure out where you want to be and make a plan. Just make a plan. Where do I want to be in 10 years? How do I get there? Do I need certifications? Do I need to make a job move? Do I need to, develop more skills? What is it that I need to do so that I can get to that point where I really want to be 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 1 year from now? And believe it or not, a lot of people just don't do that. They have a mentality that, oh, the company will do it. Or, it's hard enough getting up, going to work, having a family, trying to stay healthy. I don't have time to plan my career, but you really need to, because that's the funding mechanism of your life and all of the things you want to do.
Yeah, it is so true. We had a guest in the podcast, Mike Perez. He came and he was diagnosed when he was very little with severe ADHD, but it didn't, that diagnosis didn't define who he was. And then he went against the odds and he had to do a lot of inner knowledge and inner learning of who I am and how I perform better. And he learned that regular school is not his thing. He performs better when he does 20 minutes this, 20 minutes that, or whatever. He takes a break, he goes out, he's eating different than most of us, he's doing a lot of exercise. Right now, he's founder of two or three companies, and he is thriving, and he is, living his best life. And he said to us in that podcast, my goal always changes. Like my goal in next year is going to be higher than I had for me for this year and from last year, because that is what is supposed to happen. And I found that so amazing that sometimes when we look at people, and it's very interesting to me when people say, having that getting into, I don't know, into that company, that because it's a big company, I will have more stability. And to me, that word is so interesting because I work with big companies, and it is not that feeling that you get. But you have also transitioned all the way from this to this. Uh, and we were talking before we started the podcast about some of those skills that you built. So, do you want to talk a little bit about that transition? And it's in line with what we are seeing and with what we're talking. Continuous improvement. Where do you want to be? How are you upscaling your skills? How are you keeping up with what is in the world? So, can you tell us a little bit about your transitions?
Sure. So I think some of the things that I did, I used to be in fashion in New York, sales, advertising, ended up in California, in Silicon Valley, not technical, couldn't get a job. And quite honestly, I had to tempt my way into work so I could learn computers. And then I finally got into Apple Computer on a temporary basis. And after 6 months, I was hired. And I got the job that nobody wanted. I ended up in manufacturing. You know, if you can imagine working for Vogue magazine and then you're in manufacturing with production lines, it's pretty, it brings you down a little bit. But I stayed in the manufacturing. It ended up being one of the best jobs I ever had because I learned about project management. I realized I was very good with numbers. I was very organized and I ran large manufacturing teams. But the best thing for me was it traveled me around the world. And to date, I've been to over 100 countries through
Wow.
work, which for someone coming in your early 20s and someone's flying you around the world to exotic places, you're like, this is great. I can put up with the manufacturing. But it did come to a point where I said, I don't like manufacturing. I like the travel. I like, learning. So I asked if I could do, which I recommend people do. There was someone going on maternity leave in the company in marketing, international marketing. And I said, if I could cover my job and her job for the maternity leave, which was basically 4 to 6 months, could I try it out? Because I don't know. I think marketing is going to be where I want to be, but I don't know. And they let me do it. I wrote a proposal. I worked a lot. It ended up, I hated marketing. I hated it. And I said, oh my God, it's worse. But I was on a trip and I was telling someone this story about manufacturing. And now I have a lot of degrees because they're telling me keep taking degrees. And they said there's a strategy group opening up. And a lot of people don't like to move into these new groups because they're risky. And I said, I got nothing to lose. Let me try for it. And it ended up I moved into the strategy group and they combined my manufacturing and marketing background. And I did that for a while, but I still didn't like it. So then I said, you know what? You have a gap. You need strategy on higher education at a public sector level and a private level because I had to go back to school so much. I ended up being a visiting scholar at Stanford. And so when customers came to visit us in the company, they said, I want to talk to that lady from Stanford.
Wow.
And so I said, then you might as well have a higher education practice. And that's what we did. We created it and it worked out really well. And then I realized I wasn't getting promoted in the company. So I said, I got to go. And you got to remember, if things aren't working for you, you got to go. And so I started looking outside the company and connected with recruiters and ended up at a much higher level. I was at a vice president level in a new company running large scale groups. So, you have to take the risks. You have to think about what you like. And if you don't know what you like, at least figure out what you don't like so that you know where not to go. So there's a lot of little stories in there, but it all really wraps around that you have to be in touch with yourself to try to figure some of these things out.
So that part I find in STEM for like technical people is very difficult because nobody teaches you how to get in touch with yourself, and it sounds very woo. So people get scared when we speak about it. Can you tell us how did that work for you? Like, what are some of your practices, or what did you do to really be in touch and listening to your heart and saying, okay, this is nice money, this is good traveling, but I don't like it.
Yeah.
Like, how did you come to that realization?
Yeah. So I think, I love technical people because they're so precise. It's very comforting working with technologists because of that attribute that they have. And we used to partition in some of the companies I work for that there might be a track for technologists who only want to do technology and making a track so that they can continue to accelerate and do well. And let me tell you, and you probably read the news, there was someone at Google who left in frustration years ago, an artificial intelligence engineer, and they brought him back a $2.6 billion comp package. So if you are a really good engineer, I think it shows that if you're really good at what you do, um, you might as well stick with it, right? Because you could be worth a lot if it's hot and in demand. I'm a big fan of cross-functional teams
Hmm.
because it gives you a way to be in your role and have visibility with other people in different roles so that you can see where what you like or you may not like, or it might be something you'd like to expand into. And, you're an engineer. Do I want to be a sales engineer? So I can share my expertise. I also used to do for my teams create powerful pairs. And what that is I would take someone who was really strong in one thing, pair them with someone who was not strong in that, but strong in something else, like an opposite, and put them together so that they could work on a team and cross train and learn from each other. It's like a mentoring.
Hmm.
And sometimes it worked out that people really enjoyed it, or people found that they could expand their skills in a different way. Now, I realize not everybody can do that, but again, individually, you can join cross-functional teams. You can, do a lot of these things on your own. And also, classes and certifications, I think, are good. It just expands your pie. So if you know one thing in engineering, well, maybe you could certify in something else in engineering so that you're a stronger package to somewhere else or another company.
So that tackles down into being relevant and continue to be like upgraded to what is happening around. So the message is consistent on it's your responsibility. Your career is nobody else's responsibility than yours. And then you can go as high or as far as you want to, as long as you put up the effort.
Yes, and another thing is for engineering, you can always become a consultant.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of engineers who have, after the corporate world, have found roles in being a really specialized consultant. And that's like, in essence, having your own business. And then you get a lot more exposure to a variety of companies. Or they move from a large company to a small role in a large company to a big role in a small company. So there's a lot of ways you can think through your career path and what that could mean.
So, how can people get rid of the scare moment of, oh my God, how do I move somewhere that is very unknown and I don't know anything? By preparing in a little steps or by doing it and cold turkey?
Yeah, so something that I did and I recommend for a lot of my employees to do is to set up one-on-ones with which are informational discussions with people that they admire in the company or outside the company. So if you see people that you say, I don't know if I'd like to, that person's really successful, but I think I'd like to understand what they had to do to be there, to get to know them. And an informational interview or conversation can only be like 20 minutes. It could be on a phone call, a Zoom call, or over coffee. And you get to know the people that you really respect. And it could be your manager, it could be, a friend, to ask them, what path did you take? Because I'm thinking I might like to try it. Because a lot of times, if people are encouraged by other friends, they may be more inclined. I mean, I'm sure you might notice that friends always bring friends over
Yeah.
into their new companies because they like
Yeah.
working with them and being together. And it's usually one friend who takes the initiative and then brings the whole team along with them. And so I'm a big fan of one-on-ones because it's a very safe way and it's very fast. It's very fast. And people love talking about their careers. And then they'll give you two references or two more people to talk to help you. You don't have to do anything. All you do have to do is listen and ask questions. And I also recommend networking with recruiters. Recruiters, you don't wait until you need a job. A recruiter is somebody that you want to get to know just in general. And the best way to get to know a recruiter is to find someone who's specific in your industry, very specialized for you, and give them references. Because if you give them a reference and that person gets a job, the recruiter makes money off of that, and then they'll come back to you. and they'll want to do something nice for you. And so I think it's important that you get quality recruiters as part of your personal board of advisors. And a lot of people refer that, get a personal board of advisors, which are people who can help you inside the company, outside the company, uh, recruiters. And you may also want to join a professional association. They're everywhere. They have chapters, and they're very specific to engineering, marketing. I was one in women in technology. I mean, there's so many associations out there, and you end up meeting people who are in the same industry as you, and you basically can share best practices and a lot of knowledge.
Those are really, really good tips. Thank you, Tracey. Now that you mentioned women, what is the role that women are playing in this technological change and this transition that we are moving into?
I think women are incredible. When I was organizing my team, I had a virtual organization, and I required very specialized advanced degrees because we were a research group, and I had about 65 people. And I needed people with PhDs, MBAs, advanced technologies in writing. That's a really hard skill set to find. So one, it had to be virtual. All but two people in my organization were women because one, they pursued education more than men. Two is they're very comfortable working in virtual environments and multitasking, especially if they have families or elder care responsibilities. They were very focused, and they were very responsible. And I found that having a women team was amazing, because you didn't have an oversight. They were very independent and they got along with each other. So I think women are amazing, and many of them today have gone on and started their own companies or decided, I'd like to be in a large company or small company. But again, it's really up to the individual and what they want to do. But I've had incredible success having all women teams. It's just been an amazing for me.
I agree with you. When you are like, if you're looking for multitasking, who can multitask better than a mom? It's like, yeah, no one can beat that. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, I'll
So
tell you a funny
definitely.
story. One of the when I was building the team, there was one woman in corporate, and I found out that she wasn't a fit for whatever reason. Management didn't think she was a fit in this one organization, and so they didn't know what to do with her. And I said, "Why isn't she a fit?" And she said, "Because she has too many degrees." And I said, "Oh my God, I'd like to meet her." Well, she did. She had about 5 or 6 degrees, and she was off the chart smart. So she was standing out above and beyond everybody, that nobody knew what to do with her. So then I said to her, "Have you ever been in a leadership role?" And they didn't let her get ahead. And she said, "No, but I have 10 brothers and sisters and I'm the oldest one." And I said, "You're going to be my leader. If you can manage growing up and managing 10 siblings, you're
Imagine.
it.
Yeah.
And so she became my director on the spot. So yeah. And it's amazing how a lot of times big companies just don't get the bigger picture. Very brilliant people. Some of these skill sets that could be hidden, like managing a team of 10, siblings, is a pretty good skill set. So yeah, and it's up to the manager too, to want to have a team that is smarter than yourself. That's really important,
Mm.
because I'll grow. If my team is smarter than me, they're going to make me keep up with them. And I want that. Not all managers want that. And I also think you have to go out and really hunt down and look for people that can help you grow and be opposite of you. So I'm in this way, but I need to make sure on my team and staff of employees that I have people who are exact opposite of me, so we don't get into that, one path or Tracy's world. It's really a challenge and a discussion to move things forward so that we do the right thing. So I think that's a good thing to do.
So you just brought up the diversity and inclusion, and how is this but I have had countless discussions about this and how a team that has more diversity brings up better ideas. Just because there is someone that has an experience, it can be a life experience, a academic experience, a work experience that is different from you, and then that complements, and sometimes you're only seeing this, but you actually need to see here. So it is that other side that complement the team to make it better. And I loved what you said about, if my team is smarter, it will kind of obligate me to be smarter so I can get and I can understand what they're talking about. And that is so really good to any leader. And that's, I guess, the difference between manager and leader. Manager wants things done in their terms. Leader is, how can we get better as a team to serve better, to do it better for the, like more holistic approach.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And, I think people do it well, excel. And people who don't do it well, they fall into the group think and managing to the status quo. And that's where you fall into this, well, I could replace some of these people with technology if I'm not allowing them to think out of the box, challenge the status quo, do things differently. And that's because otherwise you don't grow. And if you don't grow, that means you're not increasing revenue. It means you're at risk anyway, right? Because
Yeah.
you're not growing the company or the organization you're with.
Tracy, thank you so much. I told you at the beginning, I always want to talk and talk more because you guys, everyone that comes to the podcast is so interesting. And I just gonna echo something that you said before when you talked about the one-on-ones. It's been the same with the podcast. Sometimes I reach out to people and I'm like, oh, that person is, way out of the league. They are VPs or they are, CEOs or they are in such position and just by reaching out, we have been able to have amazing guests like yourself that have international experience that bring a lot to the audience. And I'm very thankful for that.
Well, thank you so much. It's a wonderful program, and thank you for including me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tracy, and to the audience, thank you so much. And we'll be coming back soon with another amazing episode of the Material Business Podcast.